I didn't tell anyone. Not when it started, not when it got worse. Because how do you explain pain that doesn't leave bruises? This isn't a story about shouting matches or slammed doors. It's about the quiet kind of breaking, the kind you carry alone, behind smiles, behind, "I'm okay." I stayed, longer than I should have, hoping things would change, hoping he would change, and maybe. I stayed because I thought love was supposed to hurt a little, because no one ever taught me the difference between love and control, when control comes dressed as care. So if you're listening and this feels familiar, this story is for you. These are the things I never said out loud. The things I didn't say. Everyone loved Marky. He had this laugh that could light up a room, that kind of voice that made people pause mid-conversation just to listen, and the kind of presence that drew others in like a magnet. I remember thinking, how lucky am I? He called me his peace, and in the beginning, I believed him. Because love always begins softly, with forehead kisses and inside jokes, with good morning texts and long late-night calls, with promises whispered during car rides and hands held a little too tightly. At first, he made me feel rare, like I was something precious, like I was the calm in his otherwise chaotic world. But the thing about chaos, it doesn't like peace. It wants to own it, to control it, to mold it into something quieter, smaller, easier. The first time I noticed a crack, it was during a dinner with his friends. He laughed, poked fun at my weight. Everyone laughed along. I did too, even though it didn't reach my eyes, even though I skipped dinner that night and the next. When I asked him about it, all he said was, "You're too sensitive. It's just a joke." And somehow that made me feel guilty. I started laughing at jokes that hurt. I started saying, "It's okay," when it wasn't. I started thinking, maybe I really am just too much. And so, slowly, I began to fold myself smaller. I stopped wearing red lipstick because he said it was too loud. I unfollowed my guy friends because he said they were disrespectful. I texted less, stayed home more, smiled less. He never yelled, never cursed, never laid a hand on me. But his silence when I disagreed, that silence was thunderous. It could stretch across days. And I learned over time that silence could be louder than screams. Whenever I cried, he'd hold me. But only after making me feel like my tears were my fault. Only after saying things like, "You always take things the wrong way," or, "You know I didn't mean it like that." Then he'd whisper, "You're my only calm, my only good thing. Please don't give up on me." And I'd stay, even when it chipped pieces of me away, even when I started to disappear inside myself. I stopped painting, stopped dancing barefoot when it rained, stopped laughing loudly the way I used to as a girl. I became a shadow of myself, quiet in spirit, soft in resistance, dull in dreams, but people still saw the happy photos, still saw him opening doors and holding my waist in pictures, still thought, "Marky's such a good guy." And me? I didn't say otherwise, because I was too tired to explain what it's like to love someone who slowly makes you invisible. One night we went out to eat. I thanked the waiter, just politely, just normally. Later in the car, Marky stared at me, not angry, not loud, just cold. "You were too friendly," he said. "Are you trying to get his attention?" I froze. I said nothing, and he said nothing back. Just silence. Disappointed silence. That silence stayed with me far longer than any bruise ever could. I began to fear making eye contact with strangers, began to fear the way I said, "Thank you," began to fear being me. But fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it settles into your bones quietly, until you forget who you were before it took hold. There were no big fights, no door slams, no dramatic moments I could point to and say, that was the day everything changed. Just 100 quiet days. Each one taking a small piece of me, each one teaching me how to survive by shrinking. He'd say, "You're lucky I'm patient." Or, "Not everyone would understand you the way I do." And I believed him, because when someone says things softly, with love in their eyes, you don't always notice the sharpness hiding in their words. I stayed, longer than I should have, because I thought love was endurance, because I thought leaving meant I failed. But one day I woke up, and I couldn't recognize myself anymore. I was staring at my reflection. Messy bun, tired eyes, shoulders curled in like they were always waiting for impact. And I whispered to the mirror, "Where did you go?" That's when the ache became louder than the comfort, when the silence between us started to feel like mourning, like I was grieving a girl I had abandoned to keep the peace. And peace, real peace, should never cost your voice. I didn't leave all at once. It started with little things, waking up early to sit in the sun, just to feel warm again, journaling the things I couldn't say out loud, smiling at strangers again without guilt, wearing the red lipstick he hated. He noticed. He asked, "Are you trying to get attention?" I smiled, gently for the first time in a long time, and said, "No, I'm just trying to find myself again." That night I knew it was over. Not because he said anything, but because I didn't flinch when he went silent, because his disappointment no longer felt like a storm, just wind I didn't have to walk into anymore. So I left, quietly. No screaming, no begging, no goodbye letters, just a suitcase, a deep breath, and a decision to finally choose myself. At first, the loneliness was unbearable. Not because I missed him, but because I had forgotten how to be alone without being afraid. There were nights I curled into myself, shivering, not from cold, but from memory. Nights I reached for my phone, then stopped, knowing I wasn't reaching for love, just familiarity. But healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's washing your sheets at 2 a.m. because the smell reminds you of him. Sometimes it's saying no without explaining yourself. Sometimes it's just sitting in the quiet and realizing it's not scary anymore. One morning I danced barefoot in the kitchen again, red lipstick on, sunlight spilling across the floor. No one watching, no one approving, just me. That's when I knew I was coming home to myself, not the girl I was before him, but the woman who now knew that love isn't sacrifice without return. That kindness should never feel like control. That peace isn't something someone gives you, it's something you protect. People ask me what happened between us. I smile politely and say, "We grew apart." But what I really want to say is, I outgrew the version of me that tolerated being loved like that, and in the silence of my new life, I found something he could never give me. Me. I never really told anyone what happened, not in full, not in a way that made sense. Because how do you explain the kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises but rearranges the way you breathe? Marky was never the monster in the stories. He didn't scream, he didn't break things, but somehow he broke me. With silence, with sighs, with the kind of love that only worked when I was smaller, quieter, less me. He called it love, and for a long time, I believed him. Because when someone says, "I only do this because I care," you start to think pain is a form of affection. I used to think I was dramatic, too sensitive, too much. That's what he said, after all. I believed I had to earn kindness, that my feelings were inconvenient. So I shrank. I shrank until I couldn't recognize my own voice in a room. He didn't hit me, he just made me feel like I deserved less. And that kind of wound takes longer to name. Because no one comes running when a woman says, "He made me feel invisible." But invisibility is a slow death. It's the sound of your own laughter fading. It's dressing in colors you hate just to avoid comments. It's apologizing when you haven't done anything wrong, just to keep the peace. I didn't leave all at once. Healing didn't show up with a trumpet. It whispered. The first time I said no and didn't explain myself. The first time I laughed too loudly and didn't feel guilty. The first time I looked in the mirror and said, "You're enough." Those were my victories, small, quiet, mine. I don't tell this story to get sympathy. I'm telling it because someone out there needs to know emotional wounds are real. And just because he didn't yell, just because he said "I love you" before making you cry, doesn't make it okay. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not too much. You are just finally waking up, and waking up hurts, but it also saves you. So here I am, a little older, a lot wiser, still soft, but no longer silent. If he ever hears this, I hope he recognizes himself, not because I want revenge, but because maybe, just maybe, he'll think twice before shrinking someone else. I used to think the bravest thing I did was leave, but no. The bravest thing I ever did was choosing to love myself after someone taught me not to. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe for more stories.